Hey, welcome to the Virtually Speaking podcast, VMware Explore 2025 coverage. We've been talking so many great things this week about announcements, talking to subject matter experts, talking to customers, partners, and yeah, sometimes it's fun to talk to just some of our coworkers, see what's new, but also see what what they're talking about. And this is certainly no exception, John. You know this guy?
I think we may have met before.
Oh yeah?
He's your brother, right? You guys look a lot alike.
He's definitely my brother from another mother. Jad El-Zein, welcome back.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Always a good time here.
Absolutely. So, I mean, a little inside baseball here, but certainly from an internal organization, you're now one of our coworkers.
Yeah.
Welcome to the team, my friend.
Yeah, welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back.
Been a minute. Had a little stint at with the Tanzu Business Unit. Learned a lot, but came back home recently with a focus on some of the things we're going to talk about today. So yeah, happy to be back.
Definitely still a strong focus on modern apps.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, why don't we just start at a very high level and then maybe we can move a little forward, but application modernization, what's important about that for customers right now?
Well, I mean, we've only been talking about it for a dozen years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
is it still modern, or is it just this is what the normal pattern? Like
app modernization became kind of like a category, not necessarily a thing. When we talk about modern apps, depending on who you're talking to, they're saying, okay, modern apps are containers, modern apps are microservices, modern apps, have some sort of pipeline and some sort of ecosystem or open source component to them, or just running in a public cloud, right? But really, modern apps is just getting the apps designed, built, deployed in a way that is functional and serves the business for the purpose they're built for in the first place. So we have to get beyond just suggesting a modern app is one specific thing, because VMs could absolutely be modern apps, as can containers and Kubernetes based workloads. So workloads that are in use today to serve the business, modern apps.
I like that. Let's define it pretty broad.
I can definitely agree that, when I first started hearing about, modern apps, I would certainly say, oh, that's the Kubernetes thing.
Yeah,
we got our
exactly.
VMs, and then we got that Kubernetes thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case anymore, and certainly things are the lines are certainly getting blurred these days.
Can I do CI/CD with a monolith?
Yeah. I mean, the reality is, the modern app movement was about moving off of VMs and off of monoliths. But that's not the reality. That was the original push. The reality is that VMs aren't going away.
Yeah.
That infrastructure and the fact that those workloads still exist means they are absolutely critical, and they are where they are because that's how they were designed, and that's how they're going to continue to be served. What we do see, though, is bits and pieces of applications, especially the modernized layers, like the front end, any additional architectural components of an application. Those would be, built on top of Kubernetes, built in a public cloud, split from the back-end monoliths. But those components will absolutely be part of this conversation for years to come. And the fact that we're still talking about it, right? It's been 20 years.
Also, when we first started talking about these things, it wasn't such a core piece of the infrastructure like it is today, or certainly like VCF, for example, with VKS in there. I mean, it's just natively inside of VCF now.
Yeah, for VCF, I mean, this was a critical piece. Now, just so we can have a little bit of background, I've had several talks this week that have been great, very well attended, several discussions in the executive briefings and such. And it's funny that still today, customers are asking, when did we get into the Kubernetes business? And so we actually have a slide. It's like, okay, we have to start presenting this stuff. I mean, workload control plane was in 2015, 2016, something like that. And then the Heptio acquisition in 2018 really supercharged that. And we had an entire business unit wrapped around, building these cloud native applications on VCF. And then, with that business unit turning into Tanzu, and Tanzu being the driver of Tanzu Kubernetes Grid and some of the renaming we did then, I mean, there's a very rich history, right? VMware remains one of the top 3 contributors to CNCF and the Kubernetes community, and several other open source projects. But this is in our DNA. It's been in our DNA for quite some time. In fact, with the Heptio acquisition, we even gained the co-founders of Kubernetes. So I've had to remind more people than I would like this week that we're not playing catch up. This has been the game, and we need to just get behind the idea that VCF and Kubernetes is your infrastructure. It's the foundation, and Kubernetes is just as much as the infrastructure as the hypervisor is, as vSphere is, right?
Yeah.
And it's just an extension of it. Stop treating it so different.
So about that extension, like looking at hybrid runtimes, what are the lines of what is Kubernetes, like where my runtimes are and so forth?
Hybrid runtimes is a term that I actually do like to use, and it aligns with what I was saying earlier. It's the vast majority of applications, especially serving the enterprise, are going to be some combination of VM and container-based, right? Mm-hmm. And I say that because that's what every single one of our customers are saying. And so that modern app or app modernization reality isn't just about like, hey, let's rebuild this app in the public cloud, or let's just do it in Kubernetes, because it doesn't necessarily make it modern if you're just changing the underlying infrastructure, essentially, which is what Kubernetes is, but an orchestration layer on top of that. So the hybrid model becomes critical because the VMs, the traditional pieces, I say, and then the Kubernetes runtime or the Kubernetes-based workloads, they're going to live side by side. And what customers are actually really wanting to do, the most modern part of it is how I consume it, how I interact with it, how I manage it. And that's where like the Kubernetes API comes into play. So when I say hybrid runtime, it doesn't just mean VMs and clusters just spread all over the place that might make up an application. It's being able to manage all the components of a given application in the same consistent way. And it just so happens to be that doing it in a Kubernetes-based declarative API is the way to go. And that's what, this hybrid piece would be.
So then how does, from a management perspective, how does VCF actually help support these hybrid runtimes?
I mean, VCF is in a killer position, I think. And again, a lot of great conversations on this today or this week. So if we just take a step back from like the hypervisor, just VCF itself. Of course, we're all here to say that VCF is the platform to run these apps. But what VCF has built essentially in 9.0 is like the true, full, complete, holistic private cloud platform. And then to be able to confidently say that, we had to build all of these different components from the underlying runtimes to how it's consumed. So end to end, vSphere delivers the services, delivers the infrastructure, and then gives us the operations and the management and the automation and the compliance and everything that vSphere and VCF have given us over the years, but now applies that wholeheartedly to Kubernetes. What makes VCF stand out as the kind of a premium or premier platform for Kubernetes in the private cloud is that now I could consume all the aspects of VCF, vSAN, NSX, and the operational components, observability, all these different components, all managed, consumed, and operated in the same exact way through that common API. So it's beyond just the runtime, it's all the pieces that make those applications richer, more available, more compliant, more agile, and so on. VCF does a pretty amazing job there.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean it's been in the making for
a decade. Yeah. This
Yeah.
is a long journey here.
So what about Tanzu Mission Control and multi-cluster management? Because I know that's very common.
Yeah, so again, the clusters are only as good, or Kubernetes is only as good as it is managed, as it's life cycled, as it's protected and
Absolutely.
operated. And just for the an audience review here, so a few months ago, April timeframe, the decision was made to move a few assets from our Tanzu business to VCF, and specifically those are the Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, or TKGS, and related assets, as well as Tanzu Mission Control. Because a little bit of what I said earlier is those are infrastructure components. Tanzu's an application business, right?
Developers really shouldn't care about Kubernetes.
Exactly.
Like, they should consume it, but they shouldn't care about it.
And they shouldn't is the key there. They still do too much, and they're way too insistent on it. But anyway,
that's another story, isn't it?
Yeah. So those assets moved to VCF to be part of the core VCF platform entitled to all VCF customers, and I thought that was an amazing move, and it's also part of how I came back over. Tanzu Mission Control is that management plane for these Kubernetes clusters, and that came over too. Now, what that has turned into very, very quickly, and will continue to evolve, is a multi-cluster management solution that lives inside of VCF automation. And so we have to, kind of embrace this whole one cloud portal for all workloads that VCFA now brings. And so multi-cluster management, what used to be TMC, moves into VCFA, and it allows us to get this end-to-end visibility and policy management and lifecycle and control.
Well, it's interesting because being around automation for a long time, like I originally associate automation in my mind, go back to VCAC and things. I'm like, okay, this is this thing that
we can't say that.
People make these like giant blueprints, and like if you're going to spend any time in there, you need to know like 3 scripting languages, or you're going to do this stuff. But use the term portal, and you're talking about you can go in there and you can see and do these things. And there's a lot of admins out there who, maybe they don't write in Golang and 3 other languages, but like it does sound like this is becoming an area even for some ClickOps type behavior and observability, and like, it's almost like it feels almost like VCF automation is becoming an endpoint for just driving, like a portal for just consuming in general, no matter how you're by API or otherwise.
Yeah.
And then operations is kind of your read and your views into that observability.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And VCFA will continue to play a deeper role there. There's still a lot of traditional use back from, my automation days. A lot of traditional use cases like the governance and the controls and the catalog and the blueprint building and infrastructure provisioning and all that stuff. So all of that is key in VCFA's DNA, I guess. But also keep in mind in VCF 9 and like the influence that came in from vCloud Director, and to really build this tenancy, like true multi-tenancy capabilities, those clean constructs between provider and consumer and or organizations. All of that now comes together so beautifully, right? And then when you add modern apps and the Kubernetes workflows, it just fits so nicely inside those structures, and it allows like a provider to manage individual tenants, and within those tenants, individual business groups or consumers from that perspective. So it gives me a lot of granular control on who can see what and the infrastructure they get and which versions of Kubernetes they're running based on their application requirements. So I gotta say, it's come together like very, very nicely, and these different bits that have been strategic chess pieces moving in, have just been just really great to make the platform whole.
So we've moved these chess pieces in. How do they benefit from the other things within the traditional SCDC stack, the vSANs, the NSXs, the automation?
Yeah, so that's actually an area that I'm going to focus on a lot. So my focus has been like modern apps on all the bits of VCF, right?
Okay.
So how do all these individual services make your apps better? We'll just call them apps or workloads. Now, you can't talk about workloads without talking about AI workloads and persistent database workloads and distributed applications that, for whatever reason, live across multiple instances of something for resiliency and all that stuff. Now the issue is, as applications were built or migrated or moved to Kubernetes, there's a lot of architectural decisions that should be made. And if you build that resilience into the application layer and you do it perfectly every time, then you're probably okay. But if you don't, you're going to rely heavily on infrastructure
for durability, availability,
mask a bad design. I mean, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
But I don't mean that to be harsh. I mean, not all applications are built with full resiliency across the app
or
layer.
that resiliency it's very complex. There might have been a lot of overhead. You had to learn something bespoke, and sometimes it had HA in theory, but it was never quite. I mean, vSphere HA is bulletproof. It just works.
Yeah.
And so to a certain degree, there's nothing wrong with nesting those capabilities, I guess.
Yeah,
but
no, absolutely. So Kubernetes and VKS will take full advantage of what we've served up for a couple decades now. But think about what we're doing also with vSAN stretch clusters, right?
Yeah.
With what we're doing in the VCF networking layer, or what we're doing in observability and automation and integration and extensibility across the stack. Any application that lives in this world now can immediately benefit from all of that. So you have an application that's not perfectly designed or just it's too fidgety, right? When you put that in VCF and the underlying infrastructure is stretched and resilient and built the way infrastructure should be built in a private cloud, it makes everything sitting on top of that equally resilient. Equally,
NSX is handling your WAN network failover and situation. You're not having to do weird stuff with GSLB yourself, or maybe you are using Avi.
Yeah, from the outer edge in, but also inside of the applications itself. We're passing that into the Kubernetes layer, and our VPCs are playing a big role there. But it really makes it so the application design is independent of the actual resiliency of that application, because vSphere will pick up where the app leaves off, and it actually makes a lot of sense for those who have not invested in re-architecting their apps to be modern, but just moved a monolith to a container runtime, for example, right? We see a lot of that.
I mean, you can update the monolith faster,
That's one benefit, yeah. I'm curious, I know you've been talking to customers this week and probably even before this event, but have you seen any common use cases, any recurring themes on using this on VCF, or even ways that it may have simplified it for them? Yeah,
so my pet peeve still remains here in 2025, the silos that remain within our customers, and those are the conversations that the customers that come here still to explore, they all have the same, they want to go back home and discuss the solutions with their counterparts across other teams, like the app teams and developer teams and so on, or their platform engineers and so on. So a lot of the traditional VMware folks have kind of evolved with technology and have become the platform engineers, especially those organizations that have truly embraced Kubernetes as infrastructure, right? So the most interesting conversations I've had have been like, hey, what do I go and tell these guys about why they need to let go of Kubernetes and just, be the developer, be the consumer. And we'll give you enough autonomy to do whatever you need to do and whatever your application needs to do. And so I've spent a lot of time just kind of coaching them through those, short of saying hey, bring them here next time or let's get on a call. We as VMware, we have to do a lot of this coaching still, and we need to clean these organizations that are stuck in a process that we've kind of outgrown at this point.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, if nobody was ever there to take care of me and my infrastructure for my job before, and then suddenly somebody comes along and says, "Hey, I'm going to do that for you now." There's certainly going to be a level of trust that I might need to have first. And so
this reminds me of the fights we had though when we first rolled out virtualization, and you had silos who physically owned things. The DBA who actually owned the metal under their database, and it's well, it's a VM now. Well, who else is on that host? Am I sharing? No, I want reserved resources. Fine, we'll give you a resource. And getting people to slowly detach from that.
And there's so many similarities to back in the P2V days. So many similar. Because we're having the conversations hey, why so, for example, another one we have, in VCF, you're virtualizing your Kubernetes infrastructure. Us and every hyperscaler.
Yeah.
Sure. And then you have this bare metal to versus virtualization conversation, and you're this is insane.
Do you even want to manage firmware? Are you even managing firmware? Let me look in your out of bands. Let's see how patched they are.
And we're sitting there talking about DRS and vMotion and scheduling the NUMA nodes and how vSphere does that in a way that is independent of how the application is built and is independent on on anything. And the other thing is the bare metal conversation kills me, because you say bare metal and it's like Kubernetes running on bare metal. No, Kubernetes is running in an OS.
Yes.
Running on bare metal.
On bare metal, yeah, there is.
So for
It's not running in assembly.
Yeah, so for us, it's also running in Linux-based pods, running on the hypervisor, and that hypervisor gives you levels of efficiency and agility that you cannot get.
Yeah, there's a
in
trade-off.
those one-to-one bare metal, just sitting on top of a Linux node.
It's weird to still have this conversation, to be honest.
It's weird. And again,
Time
we're
is a
talking
loop,
about,
man. Time is a loop.
we're talking about scale and like availability and being able to evacuate half
Management.
your hosts and not even think about it. And anyways, you want cloud-like, yet you're coming to me with bare metal. It's really weird. And so those are some of the interesting conversations, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's funny, which kind of leads me to my last question for you, honestly, is like, if you had to give one piece of advice to IT leaders that are just maybe, dipping their toes into app modernization, what would you say, aside from,
Yeah, so look, if you haven't revisited your processes by now, and like started to really understand that Kubernetes is just another piece of your infrastructure, start there, and it'll make everybody's life easier, right? It belongs with the infrastructure stack, first of all. Second of all, when you build or deploy a solution like VCF and it's designed for developer autonomy, as we mentioned, it's not VCF claiming we are suddenly the world-class developer platform. I mean, we have Tanzu, our brethren at Tanzu, to do that, right? It's building that autonomy, meaning that when the developer or my platform engineers and something come to the table, they have all the tools they need to get the job done. And the tools that they are familiar with and comfortable with, and their open source stuff and all these other middleware components and packages and everything, bring that with you.
Yeah.
It's historically vSphere, automation, operations, all these tools have been very extensible, allowing you to bring your own tooling, your own tool bag of stuff. So VCF automation, plus the multi-cluster management, plus VKS, and what we're doing in the supervisor control plane, all of that just extends that core mentality of we know that you're going to bring your own stuff, and we're going to make it integrate as seamlessly as possible, because we're not going to say like, hey, dump all your stuff, do things a new way. It's just not a way of doing business. So got to get behind all of that. That would be my recommendation.
I like it. Well said. As always, Jad, thanks for joining us on Virtually Speaking, my friend, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks. Really appreciate it, guys.